The settlement on Karvesh 7 had always been a calculated risk. The colonists knew they were building their homes on the edge of known space, where the galactic community's influence faded like a dying star. But they hadn't expected the Vrakti. Liara crouched behind the overturned supply crate, her rifle clutched tight against her chest. The settlement's emergency lights cast everything in crimson, turning the world into a bleeding nightmare. Smoke curled from the northern quarter where the first attack had come, swift and brutal. 23 colonists dead in the initial assault, 32 wounded. The numbers played through her mind like a funeral dirge. The Vrakti weren't sophisticated raiders. They didn't use technology beyond basic metallurgy. They didn't need to. Standing nearly 3 meters tall on 4 powerful legs, with crystalline ridges running down their spines and jaws that could crush duroplast, they were evolution's answer to the question, what if nightmares were real? A scream split the air. Liara's head snapped toward the sound. Not human, something else. Higher pitched, desperate. It came from beyond the perimeter fence, from the dark forests where the Vrakti pack had retreated after their last assault. She should stay put. Every tactical instinct screamed at her to maintain position, to wait for dawn when the creatures typically withdrew to their dens. The Vrakti hunted at night, their 6 eyes seeing in spectrums humans couldn't even name. The scream came again. Definitely not human, but something about it bypassed Liara's logic centers and went straight to a deeper place. The part of her brain that remembered what it meant to be human before humanity reached for the stars. Fuck, she whispered, and started moving. The fence had been torn open in 3 places. Liara slipped through the southern breach, her night vision goggles turning the world into shades of green. The forest loomed ahead, ancient trees from a world that had evolved without humans, that didn't care about human ambitions or human survival. The screaming led her deeper into the woods. Every shadow could hide a Vrakti warrior. Every rustle could be her last warning. But Liara had grown up on Europa Station, where ice mining meant 3-hour EVA walks in suits that could fail at any moment. Fear was an old companion, one she'd learned to ignore. She found the cub in a ravine. It was small, barely the size of a large dog, and one of its legs was caught in what looked like a collapsed hunting snare, probably set by the colonists weeks ago and forgotten. The metal cables had cut deep into the crystalline flesh, and dark ichor pooled beneath it. The cub's screams had diminished to whimpers, its 6 eyes glazed with pain and exhaustion. Above the ravine, scattered among the trees, Liara counted at least 9 adult Vrakti. They stood motionless, watching, waiting. Their eyes reflected her night vision like emerald stars. The pack was here. They'd heard their young ones' cries. But they hadn't come down to free it. Liara's xenobiology training was limited, but she understood pack dynamics. The Vrakti were testing the cub. Weakness meant death. A member that couldn't free itself, that couldn't survive on its own, was a liability. The pack wouldn't help because help meant accepting weakness into their ranks. She should leave. This was nature, brutal, uncaring nature on a world that wasn't hers. The Vrakti had killed her friends, had torn apart the settlement. This cub would grow into another killer. The cub. Liara found herself thinking of it as Fenric, though she had no idea why that name came to her. Looked up at her with those 6 eyes. There was no pleading in them. Animals didn't beg, but there was recognition, awareness, intelligence. Damn it, Liara muttered. She holstered her rifle and slid down into the ravine. The adult Vrakti shifted, their crystalline ridges catching the moonlight. A low rumble passed through the pack. Not quite a growl, deeper. A warning. Liara ignored them. She knelt beside Fenric, studying the snare. The cables had twisted in complex loops, tightening with every movement. Standard hunting trap, designed to hold until the trapper returned. The cub's struggles had only made it worse. Hold still, she whispered, knowing the creature couldn't understand her words, but hoping it might understand her tone. I've got you. Fenric's eyes fixed on her. The whimpering stopped. Liara pulled her multi-tool from her belt and began working on the cables. The metal was designed to resist cutting, but the tool's plasma edge could handle it. Slowly, carefully, she began to slice through the trap. Above, the pack moved closer to the ravine's edge. The rumbling grew louder. Liara's hands didn't shake. On Europa, shaking hands meant death. You learned control, or the ice claimed you. The first cable snapped free. Fenric flinched but didn't move. Smart cub. It understood she was helping, or at least that sudden movement would make things worse. The second cable proved more difficult. It had cut deeper, embedding itself in the crystalline flesh. Liara had to pry it loose, and Fenric's scream of pain echoed through the forest like a siren. The pack responded instantly. 9 adult Vracti began descending into the ravine, their movements fluid despite their size. They would be on her in seconds. Liara didn't run. She didn't reach for her weapon. Instead, she did something that made no tactical sense, that violated every survival instinct. She screamed back. Not a scream of fear, a scream of rage. A howl that carried every frustration of watching her settlement burn, every grief for friends lost, every desperate fury of being human in a universe that didn't care. She screamed with lungs that had evolved in Earth's gravity, that carried the genetic memory of ancestors who had looked at the African savanna and decided they owned it. She screamed with the voice of a species that had climbed from caves to cross light years, that had stared at extinction a dozen times, and said, "Not today." The sound that came from Liara's throat wasn't sophisticated. It wasn't backed by superior technology or advanced weaponry. It was pure, primal human defiance. The Vracti pack froze. 9 sets of 6 eyes stared at this small, bipedal creature that stood over their wounded young and challenged them. This soft-skinned thing without claws or armor that refused to run, that refused to submit. Liara held their gaze, breathing hard. She didn't break eye contact. On Europa, the ice miners had a saying, "Space respects strength. Give it weakness, and it'll kill you faster than vacuum." The largest Vracti, the pack leader, Liara assumed, tilted its massive head, studying her, calculating. Then it did something unexpected. It backed up. One step, then another. The rest of the pack followed. Liara turned back to Fenric. Her hands moved with renewed speed, cutting through the remaining cables. The last one snapped free, and the cub stumbled forward, nearly collapsing. Liara caught it, feeling the alien warmth of its crystalline body, the rapid thrumming that must have been its heartbeat. She looked up at the pack. "He's free. We're done here." Slowly, carefully, she climbed out of the ravine. Fenric limped behind her, favoring its injured leg. The pack watched in silence as Liara walked through their midst, the wounded cub following in her wake. When she reached the treeline, Liara finally looked back. The Vracti hadn't moved. The pack leader's eyes tracked her, and in that alien gaze, Liara saw something that might have been understanding. Respect, or maybe just recognition that this world now held a different kind of predator. Fenric paused at the forest's edge, looking between Liara and its pack. Then it limped back toward its family. The pack surrounded the cub, their rumbles taking on a different quality, not threatening, but almost gentle. Liara made it back to the settlement as dawn broke. The attacks stopped that night. The Vracti still hunted in the forests, but they gave the human settlement wide berth. Later, xenobiologists would theorize about pack dynamics and territorial instincts. They would write papers on apex predator behavior and mutual respect between species. But Liara knew the truth was simpler. Sometimes, the universe just needed to be reminded that humans didn't back down. Not for nature, not for logic, not for anything, they screamed back. And the universe, for all its vastness and indifference, occasionally had the good sense to listen.